All right, what's up, DeGens? We're back. Another edition of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast, as always, by the good guys over at Fantasy DeGens. I am Sean Mitchell, as always, at S Mitchell on the Twitter machine. Hope everybody's had a good weekend. It is Sunday. I'm recording for the Monday pod. Only 6 games on the slate today for this Monday game, Monday slate, I should say. But we got some decent games. Of course, it's overshadowed by one big, humongous game, or humongous total, I should say. We have a couple games without totals, but nonetheless, it looks like a pretty decent slate. Should be pretty fun. So, as usual, I'm going to jump right into the totals and spreads of each game, kind of talk about the pace, a little bit about the games, drink a beer, and then I'm going to jump into the positions as usual. So, first game that we have is the T-Wolves and the Pistons. We don't have a line on this game because we don't know if Blake Griffin is going to play. We don't know if Derrick Rose is going to play. Looks like Tim Frazier is probable. Not that really matters too much. We still got news on the Wolves side with Jeff Teague, Shabazz Napier, if those guys are going to play or not. Obviously, a lot of moving parts there, but it is pretty pertinent to mention that the Wolves are ranked number 2 in terms of pace on the season. We know they like to run with a lot of pace. They've been decently fast. Detroit is 25th. So, kind of a little bit of a perfect storm there where you got a pace-up spot with Detroit, who doesn't play a lot of defense, with Minnesota, who doesn't really play a whole lot of defense. It's a good game. So I'll be kind of curious to see that line. I'm thinking it's probably going to be within the 226 range is my guess. Might be lower 220s. I don't know. My guess with the pace that Minnesota runs at, I think this game could probably be in the 226 range is my guess. Moving on, Mavericks at the Celtics. Boston minus 3.5 here at home. 217 on the total. Mavericks 18th in terms of pace. Boston 17th. Both kind of mid-pack. It's funny that the Mavs have moved up like 7 or 8 spots within the last couple of games. They were ranked probably like 26th or 27th a week or so ago, so maybe longer than that. But either way, that's pretty decent. The total is not too awfully bad. It's actually the 3rd highest total on the board at the current moment, and that one's got some pretty good spots in it. Next, Grizzlies at the Spurs. We have San Antonio as an 11-point home favorite here, 226 on this total. We know Grizzlies run fast. They're ranked 6th in terms of pace on the season. San Antonio is actually ranked 14th, so this is a good game. Obviously, the Memphis will be getting Ja Morant back from his rest. It looks like Brandon Clark is out again. There's still a lot of good spots in this one. Memphis is still young. They don't play great defense. But it's a pretty high total. One of the games we'll probably definitely look to target. And then, the next one, everybody's going to know and everybody's going to flock to, and we know that. And it's just one of those ones you can't avoid. It's the Rockets at the Pelicans. 243 on this total. Houston minus 4 on the road. 243 points. If you guys remember, the Rockets and the Wizards combined for 318 points earlier this season. They had about a total right around this point. So to say that this game doesn't land in the 260s, 270s, I think is an understatement. Obviously, the Rockets moved into the number 1 rank in terms of pace, and the Pelicans are number 4. So Lonzo Ball's already been rolled out. Houston doesn't really have any injuries. Russell Westbrook's playing. Everybody is pretty much all systems go except for Lonzo Ball. Of course, both of these teams love to run with pace. Harden's been absolutely crazy lately. So that one is obviously a game that you can't not target, and we'll get to that. Jazz at Warriors, Utah minus 10 here on the road. 213 on that total, low total. Utah 27th in pace. As I said, they've kind of fallen back into their old ways, getting that grindhouse defense, play slow, half court, just own the time of possession, basically handle the ball as much, get the ball in their favor. And Golden State is not a team that can really put up with this kind of play. Golden State is not that good. I don't really love D'Angelo Russell tomorrow. It's just not really a good game to target, but there are a few spots. Let's see here. Raptors at Clippers. Raptors at Clippers, if I can talk. Toronto is going to LA to play the Clippers, put it that way. There's not a lot on this one. Obviously, the Raptors have a few injuries. It looks like Kyle Lowry's out for a while, a couple weeks at least. Serge Ibaka, they are on a back-to-back here. Kawhi is back. Toronto ranked 10th in terms of pace, and then the Clippers are ranked 16th. So this is a decently fast-paced game as well. Not exactly sure why obviously there's injuries on both sides, but again, no line. So anyway, that's kind of a rundown on the games. Like I said, only 6 on the board, but it's got some pretty good games. So let's go ahead and jump right into the point guard spot. My top option is not Luka Doncic. I don't exactly love Luka Doncic tonight at over 10K for the simple fact that he is likely going to see a lot of Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart has been the main defender of the other team's best player. He held Kevin Love to about 30 fantasy points. He's held some really good players to some low fantasy point outputs. I thought it was also interesting. I started looking at Doncic's game logs, and I wanted to see how he did on the road. And to be flat out honest, he's been great for the most part. Obviously, for the same fact that he has played a lot of trash defenses. But I wanted to look at one game, and it was the Denver game, where he put up 27.9 fantasy points. And it was basically the toughest spot that he had. Obviously playing in altitude, obviously playing against Denver, who's a pretty decent defensive team, and they slow it down a lot. And like I said, he didn't even crack 30 fantasy points. So with that being said, tonight he's playing a Boston team that is decently slow. They're mid-pack in terms of pace. But, again, he's going to get Marcus Smart. They're going to try to double-team him as much as possible. I'm sure the Celtics are a very smart team. So I'm not on Doncic, but I am on Kemba. Kemba Walker here at 8.9, put up 46.5 or more in his last 5 of 6 games. 31.9% usage at home. Gordon Hayward is out with a fractured hand. So it wasn't a huge bump to his usage. I think it was more Tatum and Jaylen Brown that got the biggest bumps in usage in terms of when Gordon was off the floor. But Kemba, man, here, Dallas allowing the 6th most to the point guard spot, 6th most fantasy points to the point guard spot here. Since they starting Seth Curry at the point guard spot, he's not exactly a great defender, and I totally expect Kemba to chop him up tomorrow. So Kemba at 8.9, love it. Westbrook, 8.8. That's totally for this game, and only being 8.8. I don't see how you can't play Russell Westbrook. New Orleans is allowing the most fantasy points to the point guard spot. They don't have Alonzo Ball. He's averaging 43 fantasy points in his last 5 games. And he's averaging – he's averaging 49.1 fantasy points on the season. So, averaging near 50 points for the season. I know he had a lot of big games early on, and, the last few games he's had have kind of been duds. But, man, this spot is like the best spot ever for Russell Westbrook. So, Russell, I will definitely be playing. Moving down a little bit, Dejounte Murray at 6K, I just think is an absolutely magnificent spot. I hate that he's only playing 24 minutes. It really caps his upside. But if you look at the numbers, though, he's been really good, like really, really good. And I can't wait for him to get 30-plus minutes, and it's coming. He's probably got like 4 or 5 more games, and he's going to be getting 28 or so, 29, 28, 30 minutes, and it's going to be marvelous. Memphis allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to the point guard spot. He's averaging 32.9 on the season. He's averaged 37.15 at home. And he's garnering right around a 25.5% usage at home. He's got the upside. He's put up multiple 40-point fantasy point games already in just those 24 minutes. So getting this pace-up spot with Memphis against the team that is allowing lots of fantasy points to the point guard spot. I love Dejounte Murray in tournaments at 6K. So Derrick Rose, true game time decision here, something we'll need to watch for. Obviously, if Blake Griffin comes back, Tim Frazier's supposed to start, but that will be good because it will put him on the second unit, and that will help him, of course, play against the second team of the Wolves. That obviously, if they're without Jeff Teague, if they're without Shabazz Napier, looks like Jarrett Culver or Wiggins will have to start. And I'm totally fine with Derrick Rose, of course, in a revenge spot, per se, if you want to say, against the Wolves' second team. If he's limited, it'll be a little bit of an easier decision. But if he's a full systems go, he practiced today fully, so get something to watch for. Moving to the shooting guard spot, Harden doesn't need no introduction, 11.5K, over 73.5 fantasy points in his last three, and he has a 42.3% usage on the road. He's done this with Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup. Had 2 games that he's put up over 70 fantasy points. So to think that Russell Westbrook has any effect on Harden is absolutely insane, and the guy's just been nuts. Again, it's just the mecca of all matchups here with these two teams, and just about every single person on each team is in play. So Harden is absolutely in play. Down below it, Wiggins at 7.7. He has put up 47.5, 63.8, and 41.5 fantasy points in his last three. Now, that 63.8 game was an overtime game with Golden State. So I think he took right around 30 shots in that game. Either way, still put up a pretty decent number. He's still put up over 40 fantasy points in his last three, 28.8% usage in his last three, and we know Detroit is not very good. Not very good on defense, and they definitely struggle against guards. Wiggins has really come into form here lately, shooting the ball well. He's getting rebounds. He's getting blocks. So I think, again, he will go underlooked here as well. I think a lot of people are going to pay up for Harden. They're going to pay up for D'Angelo Russell, who I'm not on again. And they're going to go, if they don't, they're probably going to go past Wiggins. They're going to go to Drew Holiday or Lou Williams. I think this is a great spot for Wiggins. I don't exactly love the price at 7.7K. It's not my favorite. I wish he was more like 7.1. But for his recent production and the simple fact that he's getting a pretty bad defense, I mean, I'm totally fine with Wiggins here, especially at home. Or, well, they're not at home. Either way, I'm fine with Wiggins. Excuse me. Drew Holiday at 7.4. Again, Houston allowing the 6th most fantasy points to the shooting guard spot. Looks like he's taking over kind of the point guard role with Lonzo out. 38 or more fantasy points in his last three. Totally fine with Drew. Lou at home. Lou Williams at 7.1, 38.3. Average at home, fantasy point-wise. 1.15 fantasy point per minute at home. And he's playing big minutes. He hasn't played any less than 29 minutes all season. He is their starting, or not starting. He is that spark plug that they have off the bench, and he plays 30-something minutes. So he's the main guy off the bench. He's playing against a Raptors team that's already down a guard with Lowry. So they're, kind of going to have to be playing another backup guard with Van Fleet down there. So I'm totally fine with Lou, as this will be his pace-up spot here with Toronto, as they are ranked 10th in terms of pace right now. This kind of makes the pace-up spot a little bit better for the Clippers, who are 16th in terms of pace. Lou is going to get his. He's going to take lots of shots. He's going to get a lot of usage. So I think at 7.1, I'm totally fine with that price. Jaylen Brown at 6.3, 45.8 fantasy points in his last game against San Antonio. In his only other home game, he put up 46.8 against Toronto. Tonight, he gets a home matchup with the Mavericks. He's played 32 minutes in his last two games. Of course, Gordon Hayward is out. Marcus Smart is going to have his hands full with Doncic. I think that Jaylen probably gets slotted into the starting role. And I think that he's probably going to play the 3, with Smart playing the 2. So it'll be interesting. I think obviously at 6.3, he's got a decent price tag. Obviously you like him better in that 5K range, but what can you do? It's a decent matchup. Don't exactly love the flow of this game, like I said, but he's totally fine at home. A few other guys down here at the bottom of the shooting guard range that I was looking at. Alec Burks in a revenge spot against Utah. Again, it's not a great matchup. We're not exactly loving playing anybody against Utah. But, again, the guy's been producing well. I think he's put up over, like 38, 39 fantasy points in his last 2 or 3 or last 3. He's getting the minutes. He's getting lots and lots of minutes. So, Alec Burks, revenge spot if you're into that sort of thing. J.J. Redick, if he starts again, put up 32 or 33 fantasy points last game in his start. With Lonzo out, they decided to slide him into the starting role at the 2. And he took lots and lots of shots. So, J.J. Redick, if he gets another start, totally fine with him. Eric Gordon. It seems like every time we talk about the Eric Gordon New Orleans revenge, it never works out. And I really hate myself for even bringing him on the pod and talking about him at this current moment. But it is part of that game stack, and you never know. Other than him, Marco Goodrich for the Memphis Grizzlies played 25 and 28 minutes in his last 2. He's only 3.6K. He put up 27.8 fantasy points last game. It could have simply been because Morant was out, but he still saw 25 minutes the game before. They really like this kid. He's been shooting well. He's not scared to take it to the hoop. I watched a little bit of him play. I watched a little bit of the game that he played in when he put up the 27.8 fantasy points. He's pretty decent. So at 3.6, I think he's definitely a tournament play if you want to look at that. Rolling over to the small forward spot, Kawhi needs no introduction, averaging 53.5 on his last 5 games, 55.6 for the season. Also garnering a nice little 39.9% usage at home. So, I mean, he's Kawhi. Not the greatest matchup, of course, but I'm totally fine with Kawhi at 9.4, especially under 10K. That's just kind of nuts. So, on a 6-game slate, I think you kind of got to have some. But if you are not going with Kawhi, Brandon Ingram at 7.8, over 42 fantasy points in his last 3. He's got, of course, the nut matchup here. Houston's allowing the most fantasy points to the small forward spot. He's had a 35.4% usage in his last 3 games. Lonzo Ball out, of course, and he's averaging 28.7% usage on the season. He's been the guy. He's going to stay the guy. Redick coming in takes just a little bit of the usage away, but actually, to say the least, no, it hasn't. He's actually got more since Lonzo was out. Like I said, 35.5 or 35.4% usage is up there. So Brandon Ingram at 7.8, I think he's totally fine in this matchup. Of course, big total. Bojan Bogdanovic at 6.2. Golden State doesn't play a lot of great defense. He's put up 31.5, 32.3, 38.5, and 40.3 fantasy points in his last 4 games. Over 35 minutes in his last 4 as well. At least 31 or more fantasy points in every real game. So at 6.2, I'm totally fine with Bojan. Down here, a couple punts. Kenrich Williams for New Orleans got the start last game, played 28 minutes, put up 33.5 fantasy points. Of course, if he starts again, he's going to obviously be in play. Don't really love the fact that he's going to get P.J. Tucker, but with this game, with this stack, he's got decent upside, and he's only 4.3K. So he will absolutely be on the radar, of course. Kyle Anderson in a revenge spot here against San Antonio, back in San Antonio. Of course, he hasn't been exactly great this year. He's been having some decent spots here and there. 26.8 fantasy points last game against Dallas. Brandon Clark was out. They were kind of hurting a little bit. He has been subbing in at the 5 a little bit. If Jaren Jackson Jr. gets in foul trouble, he's likely to see more time. Of course, he's 4.3K as well. So, tournament look, I don't mind it. That's kind of it for the small forwards. Move over to power forward spot. Pascal Siakam. Obviously, this is going to be a game that he's going to see probably a lot of Kawhi, which is not my favorite thing. Kawhi is a pretty dang good defender. Siakam obviously is going to see the boost without Lowry and Serge. So I'm not exactly in love with Siakam here. I think I might maybe go down to Tatum at 7.5, who's averaged over 32 fantasy points in all of his games. He's put up 37, 36.5, and 50.3 in his last 3 games at home, which is his only games at home. But he seems to play a little bit better at home. Gets a decent matchup here with the Mavs. I know Kristaps is back, which leads me to my next spot, is Kristaps at 7.2K. Again, I think Doncic is going to get a lot of smart, so I think this is going to open up more for Porzingis here. Porzingis, 50.8 last game against the Knicks. He's now put up 37, 43.8, and 43.5 in his last 3 road games. I'm totally fine with the price tag at 7.2. Last game, he was 7.1 against the Knicks. I know it was a little bit of a revenge spot, but either way, I'm totally fine with this price tag, and I hope it kind of stays that way because he's definitely undervalued. Jaren Jackson Jr. at 5'3", his price went up about $600. He was the roster monster last game, put up 32 and a half fantasy points. Still yet, he should have had more. He still played 30 minutes. He's now played back-to-back 30-minute games. Of course, on a game like this, which is the second highest total on the board, totally fine with Jaren Jackson. I hope that he can stay out of foul trouble. That's the biggest issue. He's still a very unpolished second-year power forward. They love him. He's good. Don't get me wrong. He's really good. But he needs some work. He needs some refining. And like I said, this is probably not the greatest matchup with him down there with, LaMarcus Aldridge or something like that. LaMarcus Aldridge I'm totally fine with as well. He's right around that 7K range. And I think, obviously, if he can get Jaren Jackson in foul trouble, I'm not really sure. They might have to bring in Calaballo or Cacabello or whatever the hell his name is for Memphis, and that'll bode well for LMA. I'm totally fine with LMA in this spot. Obviously, like I said, it's a big total, and he's back at home where he usually plays more at. So that's kind of where I'm at on the power forward spot. Going to the center spot, I'm really hoping that Blake Griffin does not play again, and then we can just watch KAT and Drummond just absolutely go at it, as you have KAT at 10K and you have Drummond at 9.8. And, of course, if Griffin plays, obviously that's going to put a strain on Drummond's usage. So that's not exactly what we want. We want Drummond to have the full workload like he has been, because he's been going absolutely nuts. And this would be a game that he would just absolutely get up for, because it's Karl Anthony Towns. So, those two guys are obviously my top options. Everybody's top options are going to be the chalk ones. Obviously, the Griffin news will be something we need to watch out for. But one that you want to look at, Rudy Gobert at 7.6. Golden State's allowed some really big games here lately to the center spot. They gave up almost 51 to Clint Capella. They gave up 33 last game to Steven Adams. And Rudy Gobert, it wouldn't surprise me if this was like a 15, 18, 20 rebound game for him. They're starting Willie Cauley-Stein. He's getting right around 20 minutes, but he can't match up with Gobert. Gobert at 7.6, he's actually had his price lowered a couple $100. He was right around that 8.K range, and now he's getting into that range where I just want to totally hit the smash button. So Rudy Gobert is a real nice play for me tonight. He's averaging like 35.6 minutes a game. It seems like every other game he's put up 40 or more fantasy points, and this would actually be in that pattern would be the other game. So I'm going to look for a 40-point fantasy game here from Rudy Gobert. Under him, I think a couple guys you can look at. Dwight Powell at 5.2, 26.5 or more in his last 2 of 3. He's played 29 minutes. His last game, of course, it didn't have Porzingis, so he kind of ran the low show down there. 29 minutes, 31.3 fantasy points. But Boston is allowing the 4th most fantasy points to the center spot. So Dwight Powell is a decent look at 5'2". And then on the flip side, you have Robert Williams, Time Lord, who played 22 minutes last game, and he put up 34.8 fantasy points against San Antonio. He is a guy that can put up some really good numbers if he gets the minutes. Obviously, as long as Daniel Tice is starting for the Celtics, he's probably not going to see a whole bunch of minutes. And Daniel Tice is another guy, and especially in this matchup with Dallas, who tends to be a little smaller, but with Porzingis in there, it kind of doesn't make it as much. But Daniel Tice, at the whatever price tag he's at, he's averaging a little over 20 fantasy points. And, again, he'll continue to see the starting role. So those are a couple guys in the center spot that I think you can look at as well. So this pod is now at 24.5 minutes. I'm going to try to get it done within 25. Only 6 games, so I know we had a lot to talk about. There's still a lot more to talk about as far as injury news and all that goes. So I will talk with you guys tomorrow in the chats, whether it be wherever it is. I'm on the playbook for Fantasy Alarm, so I'll also be doing that with the lineup. So you guys enjoy your Monday, and let's chat later.